two, one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taco Movie Talks. This is Taco himself, and I am brought here with a very special guest. This is Ethan from Film Junkie on YouTube. I'm going to link his channel down below. Definitely be sure to check out his channel. So, Ethan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for all the people viewing?
Hello. Yes, my name is Ethan, also known as Film Junkie on YouTube. You can check me out uh, on there, Film Junkie, capital F, capital J. I definitely, it's definitely a rip off of Screen Junkies, but uh, so yeah, I do short films mostly, and I'm going to be working on more short films in the future. And I am very, very excited to be on here.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think the first video of yours that I saw was a review of two Kurosawa movies, and then I saw both your short films, and I really did. I think you're making progress, and I really liked your most recent one too. So you should definitely go check those out.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Um, so it's cool here to have an aspiring filmmaker as we talk about perhaps one of the best filmmakers of all time, and that is Stanley Kubrick. And Ethan, what kind of inspired you to choose that for this week's theme on our inaugural combined episode?
So Stanley Kubrick is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. I would probably call him the greatest filmmaker of all time. He just his vision is unmatched, and his way of storytelling and making movies is just unrivaled to anybody I've ever seen. And I feel like he definitely get he definitely gets a lot of respect, but I think there are some movies that not are rarely talked about as much as some of his others that I think really make an impact. Sometimes even more than the ones that are mostly talked about.
That's so true. I think he certainly gets a lot of talk about. Well, to kind of take it in a different direction, one thing I really like about Kubrick is that he is able to essentially hit grand slams in any genre he dips his foot into. I mean, would you agree on that?
Hmm. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And he didn't make a lot of films, but each one was so different from one another, and they're each tackled a different genre, and no matter what genre, no matter what theme, he always knew how to just knock it out of the park.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. And we have two movies that we're going to go over for Kubrick Week. And I do think that this is certainly a topic that we could return to, as you said. I mean, he has The Shining, 2001, Eyes Wide Shut, Full Metal Jacket, like a huge, like a lot of great movies. And I mean, from that perspective, like you said, is he doesn't have a huge catalog, but what he does have, it's all quality as far as you know his
Yeah.
uh, his movies go. And the first one that I would like to start with is Paths of Glory, starring Kirk Douglas. And just what were some of your initial thoughts when you watched this one?
Right. So I before we talked about doing this Kubrick themed episode, I actually saw every single Kubrick movie.
Oh, that's
There
awesome.
were ones, yeah, and there are ones that I've revisited multiple times. In fact, one of them is the other one we're going to talk about, which I won't get to. But Paths of Glory, for this specific uh, review, I decided that I was going to rewatch it over these past couple of days. So I rewatched it, and I do have a ranking on my letterbox, which you could possibly also check out. Um, and I had Paths of Glory out of the 13. I had it at 6, and
Ooh.
now I think I bumped it up to 4.
Oh
I
wow.
love this movie a lot. I don't think it's perfect. I have one major gripe, but it is so amazing at telling an anti-war story.
I would have to agree with you on that. And if you send me your letterbox profile, I will definitely be sure to follow and to link it down below so people can see the list you're talking about. But it is certainly a strength of Kubrick to have a critical eye of certain things and to be able to tell a story that makes us find the absurdity of certain situations. For example, Doctor Strangelove I think is one of the best examples of that. And even I think parts of that you can find in 2001: A Space Odyssey 2, and this is perhaps one of the finest examples of that, and pretty straightforward in illustrating the hypocrisy, for lack of a better term, but it is
Yes.
really, really good at that. And I thought Kirk Douglas's performance and a lot of the performances were pretty great in this one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I definitely Kirk Douglas is definitely a highlight. I definitely want to give it to him. But yeah.
I would
Uh
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you can, sorry about that.
I was about to ask you what was your major gripe with this? So I was intrigued when you said that.
My one major gripe, and this is keeping me from putting it at a 10. It's like at a 9 for me, but it's teetering on a 10. But my one major gripe is that there are certain aspects that I feel like are a bit too on the nose for me
Mm.
personally, and the way they portray some of these characters. Um, but I think most of the anti-war message is done really well. But I just think there's a couple of crucial moments that I thought were just a bit too on the nose for me.
That when you bring that up, that is a very fair and accurate criticism because it's almost too much, so to speak. Where the general, I believe, and I think we'll dip into spoiler territory. Anyone watching this,
Oh
but
yeah,
the general is like threatening to bomb his own troops, and I don't know if
yeah.
that was part of where you're like too on the nose.
Well, some of the scenes with the general, but some of the scenes with what's his name? He's the higher up of the general.
Mm.
Um, I forget
Ye-
his name.
I can't remember his name either. I will look up on Letterbox right now, but I know exactly what you're talking about because I think it even
Yeah,
goes a step further with him, where when he's talking
yeah,
to Kirk Douglas, where he's like, "Oh, you didn't just do all of that for a promotion." It's like, could anyone
yeah,
actually be like that cold-hearted? But
yeah,
it certainly gets across the point it's trying to make. But
yeah.
I think you're trying to say it could have been done probably
A
more
little more subtle.
exactly.
So yeah.
It's
Um,
Adolphe Manjou or General George Brulard is the
yes, Brulard.
yes.
Yes.
But I mean,
Um,
it's definitely. I would you agree? Since I mean, I've seen maybe half, maybe a little more than half of Kubrick's filmography. Would you
mhm.
say that this is probably one of his more straightforward films?
Oh yeah. This was his fourth movie ever of 13. and it's definitely at a time where he was a lot more straightforward than that we're used to now, for
Mhm.
sure. Um, yeah, he would gradually become more and more abstract, more and more deep with his themes.
Mm.
But out of all of his early films, I think this one is far and away his best.
I do like this withstands the test of time in my mind, and I have heard, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think a lot of people are either guessing or just from looking at chronologically his movies, this was kind of the one that allowed him to have the freedom to get more abstract with his themes and the storytelling methods. Is that true from what you know?
Um, well, the thing is that it definitely was the breakthrough for his more deep abstract films. But after this, 3 years later, he did Spartacus,
Ah.
also with Kirk Douglas, and that was, I believe, the only time that he was ever director for hire.
Mm,
And but different topic. But I would say, yeah, it's definitely a gateway. It definitely wasn't the last time he would be not the at his creative best, in my opinion. But yeah, it was definitely the one that started it.
for sure. Is there
I was gonna
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the one word I would use to describe this movie is compelling. It's very compelling.
Yes. It does, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat too, as you're really pulling for Kirk Douglas to succeed, and I think you're also very much pulling for the 3 soldiers who pretty much get the short end of the stick. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Um,
plot-wise, would you just like to give like a little some of the story beats for this film?
yeah, sure. So it is about a colonel who has who is on a mission with his to send his troops. He has an order sent by the General Moreau, to send his troops to conquer this battlefield called Ant Hill, which the Germans are currently residing on the top of. And when they fail, the general decides that they want to make an example and put 3 completely innocent soldiers on death row.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself. And let me ask you this: have you ever listened to the song by Black Sabbath called "War Pigs"?
That's one of my favorite songs. It's like that might be my favorite Black Sabbath song, actually.
I I can hear that song kind of playing in my head when you look at the aspects of this film, how the higher ups
Yes,
basically get no blame whatsoever, have pawns kind of
yes,
do their bidding, and then when it doesn't go, and what I find to be one of the biggest parts of the movie that are very important to keep in the back of your mind are when both generals discuss the mission, and I believe Moreau says it's impossible, but when a promotion is on the line, or not a promotion, like another star is on the line, that's when he decides to change his mind and just go for it anyways.
yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah, no,
he doesn't see any
it was.
repercussions until every bad thing that he did leading into this comes to light.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely think of war pigs when I think of a topic like this.
If they ever
Uh,
decide to make a
it's
sequel, that would be the title I would recommend.
war pigs, yeah,
Yeah.
or at least a thematic like reinterpretation.
Yes, definitely. But I think it tells the story pretty concisely. It's very easy to follow, and
Yeah,
it drives the point home as far as I'm concerned. And I'm pretty close to you when it comes to rating this one. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars or an 8 out of 10. So I
yeah,
really liked it. I thought it was a superb film and definitely
yeah,
one I would recommend for sure.
yeah. And if there's one thing that if there's other than the themes of the film, the one thing that will always stand the test of time to me is Kirk Douglas's performance. That to me is one of the greatest performances of all time.
It was, yeah, as far as war movies go, I do think sometimes performances kind of get lost in it all, and Kirk
Hmm.
Douglas's certainly did not. And I would
Yes.
give um, a round of applause for the three soldiers who are kind of picked out to be
Yeah.
executed, and in the end do get executed, as well
They were
as
very different. Very different.
I like that because
Yeah.
it made you think this could be anyone. It could be a very religious person. It could be someone non-religious. It could be an outcast, someone who
Hmm.
just has gripes with someone higher up.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then
I
also,
love.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's all good. I love that the three men. I love their completely different ways of trying to cope with this, and the build up to the execution is so good because it just like builds and builds, and I feel like at the time sensibilities of the audience were very different. So they were like, surely they aren't going to like execute them, right? Surely it's going to have a happy ending. But the end result is a absolutely horrific act of injustice and hypocrisy.
I couldn't agree with you more. This was my first time watching this film, and you're absolutely right. The whole time I'm like, even at the 11th hour, I'm like, they're gonna get out of this somehow. And even at that
Yeah,
point, and I have this picture on the PowerPoint that's going to be on the video, but the one soldier is pretty much already dead. Like he had fractured his skull and had brain hemorrhaging, but I'm like the other
yeah,
two might still be able to get out. I really thought that until the very last minute. I'm like, oh, like I couldn't believe they went for it, and I think the story is much
yeah,
better for having done so.
exactly. And I think it was like I'm glad he cut off of it really quickly because uh, it's so just horrific that you just can't watch it any more than that. They're dead. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And one last thing that I wanted to bring up, and I'm trying to find the name of the person, but there was like someone who was under Kirk Douglas's character who was kind of sent on like a reconnaissance mission near
Yeah.
the beginning, and that gets flubbed, and the person in power in quotation marks is kind of able to abuse it and absolve himself of his misjustice too. So it's kind of a story
Mhm.
how any power in those situations can easily be abused, and I thought that was a nice wrinkle to the story as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any parting thoughts before we move on to the next and final movie, Ethan?
No, I think we should get into this last movie.
This one, I think there's going to be a lot to talk about, and that is A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Just a little summation of the story. It seems to be a dystopian future where we have a gang, so to speak, in which our main character and narrator is a part of, who go out on basically a crime spree for the first night. And then there's some power dynamics in which our main character tries to essentially reassert himself as leader. And the main character, of course, is played by Malcolm McDowell. He ends up throwing his weight around to stay in power of this small gang. Ends up kind of physically beating up two of the members, and then a revenge story kind of takes place in which McDowell's character, Alex or Alexander, takes the fall for a break-in that leads to a murder, in which we have our main character sent to jail. Then he's a part of a program that tries to rehabilitate criminals. He has interactions with people he has wronged prior to going to prison. And then in the very end, we have possibly you could describe as a happy ending for our main character. Is there anything you would like to add to that summary, Ethan, for people to get a better understanding?
Uh, no, not really. Other than the fact that the rehabilitation is basically torture.
Hmm.
It's basically torture. Uh, but yeah, Clockwork Orange. Oh boy.
What a movie.
Yeah, it is my favorite Kubrick movie, and it is in my top five favorite movies of all time.
This one, after watching this, it's like really tight in a race between this and 2001. And the longer I think of
Yes,
this one, the more I'm like leaning towards giving it the edge. But and both of those movies, I would say I think are in my top five or top six. So, I mean, these are
yes,
absolute. This is a masterpiece of a movie, and
yeah. Oh, I agree with you on 2001. That is a close second, and in my top 10 as well,
yeah.
for
Um,
sure.
and you're right. It is pretty much absolute torture, and it is probably one of the best illustrations of torture in film because you
Yes,
those I don't even know what you would call them, eye clamps, I guess you could say.
yeah. Oh my God.
I cannot
Uh,
imagine being the actor who is told, "Yeah, you're gonna have to," because I would imagine he probably had them on well longer than we see him having them on, and
oh yeah,
it was brutal just seeing it for how long we did.
yeah. The whole movie is just absolutely brutal.
Oh,
It is.
the violence
It's
is
Yeah, the
pretty.
horrifically violent scenes, rape, murder, torture, as we've stated. It was so bad that that even Kubrick himself questioned if he should have made it as violent as it was.
I think he made the right decision in doing so. Would you would agree?
Yeah, yeah. This movie, not a lot of people call it one of his best, and I'm shocked by that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I could see people saying 2001, but I really I don't know which one you could edge out over this.
Yeah, I hear a lot of Shining, of course. I hear a lot of
Okay.
Shining,
Yeah.
which I can't complain about that either. That's also up there. Um, there's Doctor Strangelove. I've heard like Doctor Strangelove over this one,
Yeah.
and I'm like, those are amazing movies, but I think this one is the most effective and was the most impactful for me personally.
I agree. And I guess that is the curse of having such a good filmography is people will argue whether this is your best film or be able to kind of mix match whatever ranking they have. Cuz
Yeah.
all the ones you mentioned are pretty terrific. So, but as far as this, it's striking. It's insanely entertaining and
Yes.
very
Yeah.
probably most effective, like you said. And one of the big takeaways I had coming out of this, which is just one of the many things that I think you could take away from this, is that among other things, people don't want to so much see you rehabilitated, I think, is especially what this movie kind of illustrated, but they more or less want to see you punished.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it definitely so it's obviously about a psychopath, a
Yes.
horrible person who is the subject to uh, a public experiment, a social experiment that is so awful that uh, it takes away one of the core elements that make you a human, and the political intrigue that follows this experiment is, yeah, like you said, uh, some people don't want to see this guy fixed. They just want to see him hurt.
Hmm.
Which, and all, yeah, and and like in the first half, he's just a horrible person. But in the second half, you just start to feel bad for him,
That is
and
something
like
that's like so masterfully done that he did all these bad things and we still feel bad for him.
yeah, it is so masterfully done. I love the juxtaposition with the horrible violence with his the character's love for classical music. I just think that character Alexander Delarge is one of my all-time favorite characters, to like a character study.
Hmm.
Just to look at him and just the stuff, how he reacts around him, and how uh, he's treated in society is just so interesting, deeply interesting.
Another thing that I think I started to pick up on was it felt like there was some generational wrangling where it felt like the newer generation was wrestling with the older generation as far as like where they were going with society.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, it's definitely comments on the future and the future of future generations, and how scummy young people are, but how scummy old people are. I mean, would you consider, what's his name, Mister, the guy in the wheelchair? Would you consider him like terrible?
He I have to mention this. He had one of the funniest faces as he was listening to Alex sing Singing in the Rain when he figured out that that was the guy who attacked him previously. That is probably like that is one of the funniest faces I've ever seen. A great acting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he
Yes.
seems like a total scumbag. And then even the drunk old man, like the homeless
Yeah.
person, I would assume he's homeless. But
Mhm.
the second he has the opportunity to do the same thing that happened to him, he does it,
Yeah.
which
For
is
sure.
kind
Yeah.
of a commentary that it's like, the people who have power, you know, the younger person had the power because he had numbers and he had youthful strength on his side, but once the older gentleman had the numbers and the person wasn't able to defend himself, I mean, he had no quarrels with, physically assaulting our main character.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, the face. I was gonna say this movie is also just darkly comedic too. There's some scenes that are really funny. Like there's the really weird sex scene that he has with the
Yes.
two girls, and like it's fast. It's like done in like fast motion, and they switch clothes. They put their clothes back on. They take them back off.
I agree with you. That was funny, and I wonder if he was trying to say like that it's more like a almost like a transactional nature that like the newer generation will find it as like that maybe the expression that it's supposed to be or that other generations find it will be lost as things evolve. Like what do you think he was trying to
Hmm.
say, or do you think that was purely for comedic purposes?
Well, I feel like the main thing that was trying to convey is sort of character, because Alex DeLarge he's like this young, kind of handsome young kid, and when people see him out on the street, they're like, "Oh, dang, that guy's good looking," and so he could just lure someone in and with his like charm, and because he is kind of charming too. Like he's horrific and he's terrible, but he is very charming.
That's yeah, so true, which is something that I like when filmmakers and story writers are able to do where someone isn't just one note evil, where it's like, okay, let's make this person ugly. He's a bad person. It's like this guy, like you said, straight sociopath, psychopath, but charming and good looking, which is nice to have that complexity to your character.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many themes, in my opinion, to dig out of this movie. Even like this might be the film with the most depth, in my opinion. 2001 is definitely very very deep, but a lot of that centers on one singular topic, I guess. One singular. It's kind of specific
Hmm.
about evolution and technology, but this is about just society and everything about society, society in the future, the social political structure, uh, that's like, so the social political structure aspect of it is timeless. I still think it's pretty accurate to today.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Which is like truly visionary in nature for him to be able to hit the nail right on the head. This movie came out 50 years ago and it feels like he had some time machine to be able to pick up like what is going on. I mean, we're not wearing outfits like the characters did, but as far as where morals kind of have gone and how everything has become very sexualized, how violence is very much a part of the culture. It's like I don't know how he was able to look at things and see what direction they were going so well.
So accurately, yeah. And that's another, yeah, Kubrick's so accurate with his themes. It's honestly scary how good that man was at depicting just stuff in the future, and statements about politics and social norms that are that you could look at them today and say, that's just like today.
Exactly. Totally. There's something that I think, and you start to find whenever you discover like very great filmmakers, and there's a difference between fact and truth, right? Fact is
Yeah.
something that we almost kind of use to guide us towards what truth is. But with these distinguished directors, Kubrick being among them, Tarkovsky, Herzog,
Mhm.
there's a lot to name, but it's something where it's almost a guttural feeling where you can instantly relate and find truth in what they're presenting.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Now, some of like the themes that I was able to pick up on, I think it's no mistake that what is the one character? Is his name Dim?
Yeah, the you're talking about the kind of the dumb one with the chain.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the the person who was trying to become the ringleader instead of Alex, they both end up as policemen near the end of the film. They enact
Yes.
retribution on our main character. But what I found, and I think there was definitely some deeper meaning to this, is that those two kind of end up becoming a part of the system, so to speak, the governmental
Hmm.
hand of justice. And Alex also is brought into the fold as a way to quell public opinion against the government. And I kind of found that to be definitely a biting commentary. And I was kind of wondering what your thoughts were uh, on that, those choices being made.
Yeah, so definitely a striking choice to have them as police officers, for sure. And I feel like that is, yeah, definitely a statement of more of the almost. I would say that's more of another hypocrisy. Going back to hypocrisy with Paths of Glory, that it's almost seems more like a hypocrisy and uh, a kind of a betrayal of their reputation. Like their reputation is completely switched because they were criminals just following orders, and now they're policemen following orders. So, what does that say?
So it's
I'm not
like,
sure. That's
in a
definitely
way,
one aspect.
they stay true to who they really are, but the leader changes. Like they are always followers, but
Yes.
the leader's different.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. You were talking about it was a happy ending for Alex, and that is definitely one of the main themes of the film is that the character arc that Alex goes through is maybe one of the most drastic in cinema history. He goes from horrific psychopath, sociopath to just broken, pathetic lapdog that is just pushed around everywhere. And then at the end, it seems that he was returned to his normal state, and and like that demonstrates to me a failure to change.
Hmm.
And to me, that means that society has failed to change anything, and history is going to repeat itself so long as we try to take drastic measures like this.
Mm, that's a that's a good thought, and I think you're right on the money with that. And perhaps he's trying to say that a slower there's no shortcuts to success or to I don't know if evolution is the word I'm looking for, but I mean, would you find that to be true?
Yeah, like progression. There's
Yes.
no progress made here by taking these drastic measures, because by because the experiment is basically took away the one of the very few things that made Alex human, which
Mhm.
is his choice and his humanity as a human being. And so, like, without that, I mean, oh man, his freedom is gone. He can't do anything, and his life is just like has become meaningless. And it's worth noting that the scene where he is trapped in the room by Mr. I always forget his name, but the guy in the wheelchair. He locks him in the room. He plays the music that they played in the experiment, and he was scarred by and didn't want to hear ever again
Mhm.
because it was paired with such horrific violence. And he gets so desperate that he jumps out of a window in an amazing camera. Like, he literally threw his camera out the window. Kubrick did. He just threw it out the window straight up.
Oh man, you have to
Yeah,
really be a genius for people to just say, "All right, yeah, if Kubrick says let's do that, let's do that."
yeah. But in obviously in the movie, he survives and he's in the hospital, and we get that series of funny, great scenes. But in the novel, he dies,
Oh,
and
okay.
so yeah, it's definitely like it's interesting because without his humanity, he is nothing, and he was pushed to the extreme that his only way out was suicide.
Yeah, like that was the better option.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I just in terms of like cinematography, I
Amazing.
just amazing. It, the shots were so it's got that neat, stark, just that really interesting, stark style of just still shots, and the fight scenes were really well filmed, surprisingly,
Mhm.
and it culminated in my one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Uh, Maybe my favorite scene in the movie is the flat block marina scene, is what I call it, where he it's definitely an important scene, but it's after Georgie and Dim wanted to take over the gang, the group, and so he heard when he was walking down Flat Block Marina, he heard this classical music playing, and there's no sound. It's completely slow motion, but he all of a sudden starts attacking his his droogs, and I love the combination. That's the combination of ultra violence and classical music that I was talking about. Something so highbrow, high class, mixed with something so with something like really terrible in the world.
I would like to ask you, like, why do you think he is it just the juxtaposition to put those two things together? Because clearly classical music seemed to be a big thing. I mean, the soundtrack for this movie is very highbrow, very good music. Why do you think he wanted to make that such a part of this movie?
Well, I think it's because the whole movie is centered around that juxtaposition of something very classy, very very classy, very innocent,
Mhm.
and mix it with something so ungodly terrible, and kind of just juxtapose that. And so all the classy people in the movie are kind of terrible.
Mhm.
And Alex himself definitely reflects that. Again, he's very charming, very likable. Not likable. He's not likable at all. But he's very charming and handsome. But he's just a downright terrible human being.
Yeah, and no doubt about that. I think another big thing that is worth bringing up. First of all, the fight scenes, like you mentioned, the the Billy Boy gang fight was like poetry in
Yes.
motion. It was almost like
Oh yeah.
a dance. It was like so well
Yeah.
choreographed, and that was an amazing scene. And also
Yes.
the marina fight scene was so well done.
Yeah. Eh, I think I love that. I forget, it is Beethoven. It is a Beethoven piece, but I don't remember exactly what movement it is. But I just love that that is such a perfect
Yeah.
choice for like a classical piece, because it's so energetic and uh yeah, it's just so energetic and so fun to listen to while you're watching him hit Georgie's nuts with his cane, like kick him into the pond, throw Georgie Dim into the pond, and then just take his hand and slice it.
That it's
And I was
yeah,
just like, that.
it's almost
It's a
comedic in a
dance.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dance. Yeah, it's darkly comedic. It's funny and it's brutal, but it's funny.
I think a huge thing that he commented on very astutely was the kind of the political message behind it, in which you have two sides that seem to be represented. It seems like the psychologist slash therapist was very much like authoritarian, totalitarian. Try saying that 5 times fast. And then
Yeah,
the man in the wheelchair, prior to learning that Alex was the man who basically led his wife to suicide, was very much libertarian in nature and did not want to see society go in the direction of them having the authority to kind of take aspects from us as human beings. And the way that Alex kind of is able to swing through both of their spheres and influence them, I thought was masterfully done. And like, what is your take on that? Because I really like that aspect of the film.
yeah. Yes, that's definitely one of the most important parts of the movie, is that there are both there's a huge debate going on, uh, whether or not this experiment is a good thing or not. You have the people, like the policeman, the captain of the guards, who thinks this is a really good thing, and like it's keeping him in shape, keeping him in order, and it's the safety of the public at the end of the day. But then you have the people in the film that are questioning why that's like pretty terrible way of keeping people in shape. That's definitely one of the big discussion points of the movie. Uh, and just the way they juxtapose when Alex is interacting with both sides of the coin. It's definitely a statement of political extremism for
Hmm.
sure.
And like one moment that I really liked is, so you have one side and they it's almost kind of I think there's like the train trolley question where it's like, would you pull the lever so that the train runs over one person as opposed to 10? Where it's kind of like if we like the psychiatrist is thinking, look, this is a punishment that we need for this person to keep people safe. And then the other side of the coin, we have the man who is in the wheelchair who is willing to help this guy until he finds out what he's done. So he is all for freedom until it is basically it has an effect on him, until it personally affects him. And then he wants Alex punished to the furthest extent that he is capable of, which is pretty neat whenever they were kind of able to go through the whole arc of that.
Yeah.
Is there anything further that you would like to bring up?
Um, no, not really. I I think this movie is definitely a masterpiece without question, and it is so it's one of those perfect storms of a movie where you get something that is so entertaining on the surface, darkly comedic, investing, entertaining, compelling, and yet you have themes to dig out of it. You have so much to talk about below the surface. And
Mhm.
it's rare when a movie comes by with that level. And Kubrick's definitely no stranger to that. I think all of his films are very compelling. But I think this is, in my opinion, his best example and one of the best examples in general.
Without a doubt. And I'm going to, since this is your favorite Kubrick movie, I'm going to assume you gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars.
It is a 10 out of 10. I would give it like 11 out of 10 if I could.
I'm right there with you. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. Definitely, as far as if you like film, period, you should seek this movie out. It is a
Yeah.
masterpiece of cinema.
And if you like very dark stories, especially, then definitely check this one out.
I would definitely have to agree with you on that. And as far as our next week's video, um, to have a theme, how would you like to do two horror movies, Ethan? Are you a horror movie fan?
I am a horror movie fan.
Okay, amazing, awesome. I will recommend one, and would you like to recommend the other one?
Yep, that sounds perfect.
All right, that is awesome. I am very much looking forward to it. I'll try to come up with something good for you, and I know that you will as well. This was your recommendation,
Absolutely.
Clockwork Orange, and Kubrick Week was your recommendation. So I have faith that you will stay on this hot streak for sure.
Yes, I will.
So this has been Taco Movie Talks. This is episode 6 SK for Stanley Kubrick. Be sure to like and subscribe, and definitely check out Ethan's YouTube page as well. He's got really good stuff. He has some short films for you to check out. He is definitely on the rise. He is a young, aspiring director. Please support him. Be sure to subscribe to his page as well. Very much appreciate y'all checking this video out, and we will catch you next week.
See ya.